You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Mooney-Flynn. Thanks for joining me on this episode. If you have been listening a little extra this week, I decided to put out some more bonus episodes, including one on bread baking that just came out with Emily Mallow. I'm just making up names. Emily Malloy, there we go. And I have Brendan Lyons on talking about using fiction to spread Catholic truth, which is pretty interesting. And now, today, I have the wonderful Mary Haseltine, who is a repeat person on my show. Mary, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, it's good to be here.
So we've been, listeners don't know this, but you and I have been talking or trying to settle on a topic to talk about for like 2 or 3 weeks now. And there's just so many good things. We couldn't come up with any one. Although I guess we could have just done multiple episodes. But here we are, since you have a lot of kids and I have a lot, but slightly less than you. So we're going to do a quick fire version of all of the topics that we wanted to talk about, but couldn't quite decide on just doing one dedicated episode. So before we get into that, I'm sure some of my listeners have heard our podcast before, but that was like over a year ago, which is crazy to think. Yeah, I guess almost because maybe even almost 2 years ago. So if you wouldn't mind spending a couple minutes just telling the listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I'm Mary Haseltine. I've been married for almost 18 years to my husband. And we have 6 boys and we have 1 son or daughter in heaven. Our kids range in age from 1 to 15 and a half. And let's see, so about 8 years ago, I became a birth doula. I graduated way back with a theology degree, and 8 years ago, I became a birth doula, and I also started writing around that time. I started blogging, and that kind of eventually turned into a book I wrote a couple years ago called Made for This, The Catholic Mom's Guide to Birth. I haven't been writing too much the last year and a half just because it's not a season of life for writing right now, But yeah, so I homeschool, raising my kids, I'm doing doula work, and yeah, it's busy, but it's a very full life. I've been Catholic my whole life, so that kind of integrates all of my life, and yeah. So here I am.
All the topics. So when you asked your followers on Instagram what topics they would like to hear from you, and basically it covers everything that you just mentioned: homeschooling, doula, birth, natural family planning. Raising boys or just raising kids in general. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about some of those topics in this episode. I do want to say real quick, I love your book, Made for This. I reread it when I was pregnant. I mean, it was my 4th child, so I know birth, but but it was a really nice refresher and just so affirming of what I am doing as a mother. So it was a very good read. And now I give it to anybody I give everybody a breastfeeding book that I like, and also your book.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for writing it, because it makes it's one of the few books that especially presents the Catholic faith in with the whole birthing process and pregnancy and motherhood. But also makes it feel like it's a joyful thing and not a medical condition that you have when you're pregnant. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to come up and find books like that. So there was clearly a need in the market, and you filled that. So thank you for writing that. It's nice to actually feel like you don't have some kind of weird medical condition.
Yes.
Which actually, when I was first pregnant with my first child, I never had these symptoms before, and I plugged them all in to WebMD. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was pregnant, but I was also completely unplanned, and I was not married at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was freaking out. And I put everything into WebMD, and I could have had one of 100 different. My favorite, though, was it said that I could possibly have cat scratch fever.
Oh,
yeah.
No, I mean, very similar.
I guess. I don't know. It's so bizarre. But yeah, I mean, and then pregnancy is like nestled into that huge 100 disease list. And you're like, well, that's not a disease, but It's on the same list as, who knows, autoimmune diseases and viruses and whatever else.
Oh, well, God is good. I never ever planned on writing a book, and it's only because he just provided this opening in my life at that time to just write it. And it was all him. So
what's the age difference? But you said you have a 1-year-old. What's the age difference between that one and the next oldest?
He is, sorry, hold on a second. He is 4, but he's about to be 5. So,
okay, so there is time in there to write a book, right? And those.
Yeah. It worked out well.
I was going to say, wow, not in a season of life for writing, but you have how many kids? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, especially because you're homeschooling too. So, but they're all boys that you have.
Yep.
And that was one of the questions that came up, is raising boys. I wish that I had more experience in this. Yeah, I mean, maybe someday I will. I have 4 kids and only one of them is a boy. And I always my husband and I want him to have a brother so badly, but so far it's just him and 3 girls who just follow him around all the time and then boss him around too. So what, for somebody who's raising more than one boy, or even just raising one boy, what advice would you want somebody to know about that? And make it quick. No. Well,
first of all, like, I'm not an expert on any of this. Let's remember that. But my oldest is 15, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I do have, 15 years now of boy raising, I guess. So I've learned a few things. But it's funny because I feel like I should start out by saying, like, so much of the responsibility for raising boys, in my opinion, falls to the father. So I mean, and a daughter's relationship is also incredibly important with her dad, of course. But when it comes to raising men, like, so much of that onus falls on my husband. So I'm just incredibly blessed that he is very involved. He loves being a dad. He's taken a lot of his own past and, like, wounds from his past and used them in a beautiful way to become the dad that he always wished he had. So I just try to remind other mothers, I guess, would be to encourage that relationship of your boys as they grow with their fathers, to kind of step out of the way when it's appropriate and let the dads have that really important relationship and lead and encourage it as much as possible. Obviously, I'm presuming that the dad is, emotionally and spiritually mature and, trying to be a good dad. Obviously, there's situations where that might not be the best, but yeah, for a normal, healthy family, so much of that responsibility falls on the dad. So encouraging that relationship, helping your husband, encouraging him to be, an amazing and awesome man so that your sons have a wonderful model to look up to. So many, I don't know if you've experienced this, but so many of the boys I know, so many of them are just carbon copies of their fathers.
Yeah.
Just in the things that they like, what they spend time with, and just their mannerisms. So much of them, they just naturally gravitate, boys, to their dads. So, and that's a good and healthy thing. I
would add on to that too. Not only encouraging your husband to be a great father, but also make sure that you are doing that in front of your own kids instead of disparaging your husband or making fun of him in some way or rolling your eyes at something, but really show respect to your husband, especially in front of your children, I think is important, because then they'll also use that as a model to respect him as well.
Yeah, that's important.
No making fun of your husbands. That's basically.
Another thing I would say is to really allow your sons to challenge themselves. And usually that's in a physical way. Boys are very physical, and they have it in their natures. It's kind of written on their natures that they need to challenge themselves and they need to know that they have what it takes and to know that they can do hard things. So sometimes that's going to mean, like, letting them do things that we might be kind of uncomfortable with physically, whether that's roughhousing or whether that's, going and exploring the woods or whatever, or using tools that you might be a little nervous about. You have to let them do that. They have that need in them to prove themselves, and that's a good thing. And to allow them to have some freedom to explore and to challenge themselves. And in our house, it's important in our house that we prioritize moral safety over physical safety. So
that's good. I like that.
Yes, I find it so telling that in our culture, we are hyper vigilant sometimes about our children's physical safety, and yet we turn a blind eye to so many huge issues when it comes to moral safety. And it's very telling to me. And so so in our house, we allow our kids to challenge themselves physically within reason, of course, but like our kids we let them use tools when they can show that they're mature enough to use tools. We let them go explore in the woods. My oldest son has a forge outside, so he does iron work and forging out in this huge furnace outside. So sometimes, I sometimes had just, some of the things that they're doing, sometimes I just have to turn away and trust them to their guardian angels all the time because they need to do that. They need to prove themselves. They need to be challenged. And I think we can shut that down in them if we're too overbearing about their physical safety. But then on the other hand, I do think that the moral safety should be prioritized. So, so we're going to just live very different than the world as Christians, right? So I think it's pretty hard nowadays to be overly vigilant when it comes to like internet and screen safety, especially with boys. So that's a huge thing. I would encourage parents of both genders to really be on top of internet safety, to not let kids have screens alone for hours on end, to know where they're going online, if they are even going online, to really cut down on screen time as much as possible. And I know people bristle at that, but and I know like obviously certain seasons of life, you need to rely on it more and all those types of things, but to really just be as vigilant as you can, given your situation, to just encourage your kids to go outside, especially boys, get outside. It's so important for them to be in nature and in however way they can to explore. And I agree. I don't know if that's helpful, but
that is. And I especially I like that you're saying that you can't be really over vigilant with online stuff. I mean, even YouTube, I think the statistic is you're within 3 clicks of being in some inappropriate realm and some bad content. So even if your child starts off with something really innocuous, that's why you don't want to leave them alone for too long.
And that has, I mean, like I said, like physical safety, they might get hurt. They might, fall and hurt themselves but like this moral safety, that can hurt their souls. And that's way more important. Like these can have devastating effects for the rest of their lives. Some of these things that we just kind of, a lot of people aren't paying attention to with the kids going online. And that's so much more important, their soul, than just, their physical safety. So.
I'm curious, do you let your kids play video games?
We don't. We don't have any of those things in our house. I don't think they're inherently bad by any means, but we've just decided kind of early on that we really wanted to just live differently, I guess. And we only have a certain amount of time with your kids, and they only have a certain amount of time in the day. And what do we want to have our whole family culture focus on? And that was not really one of the things. Yeah.
So my husband is a video game player. And he used to do it a lot, like when he was younger and didn't have a wife and children. So we have all these systems. We buy them. We buy the new ones. But we play video games. I actually used to be pretty opposed to video games myself. And then I saw a lot of research that said that it actually can do some really good things if you're the one playing. If you're just the one watching, like your brother play, you're not getting the benefits to it. But even things just, like testing your abilities, persevering, these things can happen within a video game.
Interesting.
But we let our son play video games. He's the oldest. And so, I mean, when our daughters are a little bit older, they'll be able to play too. We let them a little bit, but they've broken a couple of controllers because they just mash the buttons so hard. And we don't want to keep buying controllers. But we actually make it like a family. Just for anybody who's listening, we make it a family thing. We don't just leave our kids alone to do it on their own. We all kind of sit around and take turns playing and make sure that the other person is like getting cheered on, if they're having a hard time. So if you have video games in the house, and instead of just default letting your kids just play by themselves, it's way more fun doing it as a group.
That's cool.
I know that. Yeah, and I know my son, like, they really look forward to it when we do it. And it's actually like a communal a communal thing, but it's still a video game, ooh.
Yeah.
Screens.
Yep. They suck you in.
Yeah, they sure do. That's what I'm sure, there's plenty of people. I don't know if they've stuck with their Lenten resolutions, if they've decided to cut off screen time this particular Lent or not.
Yeah, I know, right? I think a lot of people's Lent has changed dramatically.
Yeah. I've given up things that I wasn't anticipating on.
Yep.
But so now you're homeschooling all of them, even the 15 and a half year old?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and have you always been a homeschooler?
We have, yeah. We started right at the beginning. We were both, my husband and I were both, I went to Catholic grammar school and then public middle school and high school, and he went to traditional school as well. And I went to what did I do? Back in college, I had an internship out in Colorado, and we stayed with some homeschooling families, and it just kind of opened my eyes that this was kind of a really valid way of doing life. That they weren't weird and they were kind of normal, and I really liked their kids. So it just kind of became an option at that point, and then we discerned that it was a good idea for us. So, yeah.
But do you follow a specific curriculum or style, I guess?
No, we don't. So I kind of piece my own together.
Okay.
With I use some Catholic Heritage curricula, some teaching textbooks, some Singapore math. I unschool several subjects. We do a lot of audio stuff. So I kind of piece it together myself.
Does that change each year, or you're just kind of just going with the flow?
There's some things that we've been happy with from the get-go, like Singapore math has worked really well for us, and then when that's done, switching to teaching textbooks. As with my oldest, obviously everything's new for him, so then he's done a lot more online stuff since getting into high school. And that's been a really good transition for him because he's getting into more advanced work, more advanced subjects that I don't know. And, so he's able to pick and choose classes, and it's almost like a college format at this point where you pick and choose what classes you want. And then, and he's getting that kind of college prep. If he does end up in college, he kind of has an idea now of like a classroom situation. So and we've done co-ops in the past, and we don't do it anymore, but that we've done a few stints with those. And so we've kind of done a whole lot of different things.
Just dabbled. And that's really interesting that you mentioned. I mean, especially as the kids get older, and if a person is considering homeschooling, they shouldn't be turned off or scared by the idea that they might not be able to teach a subject, because nowadays there's a teacher for every subject imaginable online. Oh,
totally. I mean,
years ago,
my kids know way more about like history and science than I do. I can assure you.
Do they, is there any Common Core stuff in the way your sons are learning, or do you just skip all that entirely?
No, I don't think so.
I don't even, okay. I didn't know if I don't even know if they even attempt to teach that outside of like traditional public schools or not.
Yeah, I don't understand all of it.
I don't either. I thought math was pretty fine as it was. So I've been counting this way for a very long time.
Yeah.
So what, do you have any ideas? I just did, just as reference for anybody listening, I just did 2 podcasts recently. One, I guess relatively recently, one maybe a couple months ago on a 101 kind of setting up a Catholic homeschool topic. And then last week or so, my husband, who has a podcast, asked me to come on his, and we talked about just, if you found yourself sitting in homeschooling suddenly because of quarantine, here's some ideas. But what for a longer discussion, since we only have a couple of minutes on each topic, what would you say about homeschooling for somebody?
I'd say if somebody feels like they are being called to homeschool, one of the hugest challenges I've come across is just unlearning the educational model that I grew up with, and that so many of us have grown up with. Just that institutional model of sitting, or not always sitting, but just like being in a classroom and having to intentionally learn different subjects and then be measured on that success, and then have that success, compared to other people that are in our same age group. It's just a different, homeschooling is a whole different model in many ways. So just unlearning all those things and realizing my kid doesn't need to to learn X subject by this age, or else he's a failure in life, right? like we could spend more time on one subject if he's having trouble with that subject, and we can fly through another subject or not do it at all if I know that he already knows it. So that's one big thing, is just kind of you're always kind of unlearning that educational philosophy that we've kind of, so many of us have grown up with. And then also just be really gentle with preschool and kindergarten and first grade. Like, those kids are so little, and so many moms I know who are starting out homeschool, they just want to like start this huge preschool curriculum with like their 3 or 4 year olds, and their 3 or 4 year olds are totally fine and happy. And they're and they want to, have this sit down, big, very extensive lessons with these little kids. And you don't need to do that. So much of that age is just learning through life. And if you do anything at the ages of 4 or 5 or 6, it's like maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour a day. Just give yourself a break, even though you're excited to start homeschooling. If you are, like, just pace yourself, because you're going to need that energy later on. So. Yeah,
I've heard it gets harder. So I'm right in that first. My oldest will be 7 later this year. And then I have a 4.5-year-old, and I intended just to start gently with my oldest only, but his little sister, who's only like a year and a half younger than him, really wanted to do it too. I was like, all right, you can sit here. I really hadn't anticipated her participating really at all. But she is really good at it and loves it. So I'm like, all right, you can.
That's awesome.
I'll print off extra things for you. You can do that too, whatever. But yeah, so like today I had like a loose idea of what we were going to do, and nobody seems to want to do any of it. So instead, that's a great thing. We don't have to do it. We're all kind of tired today. It's a glumly day outside. So instead, I don't know how actually my son came up and said, you know how many syllables is in this sentence? And he listed it off. And so then we started playing accounting and syllable games. We meshed math and phonics all together, and we're pretty much done for the day. We might bake something.
Yeah, there you go.
Go for a nature walk. I mean, it's just, especially at these ages, especially, those I've looked ahead to a couple of other years of curriculums that I was just browsing about. It gets longer and more complicated. Yeah.
And like you just said, like, take advantage of the times when your kids are wanting to learn something. Like, go for it. If you have a 4-year-old who wants to read, go, like, do it. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Like,
but forcing and making them sit for a long time. Right. Yeah, you're right. Learning through life and play is really valuable. Okay. I'm going to transition to a part that, you said in the past 8 years, you became a doula. Can you explain what that is briefly?
Sure. So there's different types of doulas. The main one people know of is a birth doula. So a birth doula is professional labor and birth support for a pregnant mom. So women hire me, and I meet with them several times during their prenatal time, and we discuss their birth plan, what they hope for their birth, their history, and we discuss all sorts of things the choices that they have for their upcoming birth, depending on their particular situation and their provider and location. And we go through all those questions and how I can help them have the birth that they want. So then I'm there with them from about active labor until usually about 2 hours or so after the birth. And I'm there for physical support, emotional support, informational support, helping them, have the information they need to make any decisions that come up, so that they can have true informed consent with procedures that are offered. I'm with them in some cases for spiritual support. We pray together. I'm giving them, back rubs and, doing a lot of physical support as well. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades in some sense for labor and birth. And then, once the baby's out for a few hours and they're kind of set and nursing, and I go home, and then we meet again postpartum another time just to kind of process the birth, make sure she's doing okay, check in with any issues she might be having. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what I do.
All of that is so important. It's so important. It does sound like kind of a jack of all trades for the birthing room. And also it seems like, you also, it's good, you're not putting the person who's giving birth is not putting all of their support eggs in one basket, say with a spouse, and that which, everybody has a role in the delivery space. It's nice that, I've never had the experience of using a doula along with any of my births. I just had a home birth. But also seems like my labors are so quick that it wouldn't, the person would get there and then they'd have to pack up and go.
Those are our favorite kinds.
I know.
You can make a doula's day.
I know. You know what? I think I had, I did my home birth for this fourth one, my first one. And it sounds like the midwife would have been happy to come back anytime because I think she was in and out pretty fast.
Fun.
So what, when would be like, are doulas best for, would you say for first time moms, or is there, a good utility of having a doula, even if this is your seventh kid?
I think so, but
yeah, well, of course, yeah, but I want to hear,
So I think especially for a first time mom, we can be pretty valuable because there's so much. I mean, the whole birth experience is totally new. It can be kind of mind blowing, and all the decisions you have to make, many of which you don't even realize you have the choice to make unless somebody is telling you specifically, like, you can choose this. Because if you end up like in our normal maternity care system, often these choices are not presented to you. They're just, you kind of get ushered into a more of an efficiency model of this is what we do. So unless somebody tells you, unless a mom says otherwise, this is just what you're going to get. So a lot of moms, first time moms, have no idea of the choices they even have for their birth and for their labor and pregnancy. So that's part of my role is helping women even know what choices they do have. And then because first time labors tend to be much longer, I think it's especially helpful for a doula to be there. Doulas can have been shown in studies to reduce the amount of interventions, reduce complications, reduce cesarean rates.
Wow.
There's a lot of data to back that up. So especially for a first time mom, like a lot of times how your first birth goes can set a tone for the rest of your births.
Yeah.
So that can kind of really work in your favor. To have a doula there. But we also provide, I've had clients that have 6 or 7 kids and labor is still hard. So sometimes the mom knows, like, those are kind of nice births in they're different. They're all nice, but it's different in a sense that they know more what to expect. So with a first time mom, I'm doing a lot of like answering of questions and, preparing them for what's coming up and helping them know that what options they have. And for like a, 6th or 7th time mom, they know I don't have to do as much of that. Then they know, like, I know that during labor, I need you to push on my back hard. That's what I'm doing. Or I know that, I know that I want to be in the hospital, but I know that this particular hospital has this protocol that I'm not comfortable with. And I need your help, like, when it's time for me to speak up for that, so it's different. It's a different type of support, but during the birth itself, it's often pretty similar as far as physical support and all that. But so around here, unfortunately, cesarean birth moms, they cannot have a doula in the cesarean room, which stinks. But,
okay.
And that's true in a lot of places, but in a lot of places you can have a doula for a cesarean. So we can be especially helpful in that room because a lot of times the baby has to go over to another spot. So dad can go with the baby and mom can stay with the doula can stay with the mom and be with her and kind of prep her. A lot of times cesareans can be, there can be some extra fear associated with cesareans for a lot of moms or anxiety. So we can work through that and we can be in the room praying with them or doing whatever they need to be with the mom. During that time. And obviously they still need a lot, even sometimes more support afterwards as they recover. So the times I have had cesarean moms, I spend a lot more time after the birth than I normally would with a vaginal mom, but because they need extra help with nursing, with moving around.
Sure. What advice would you give to somebody, searching for a doula and choosing one?
You can interview a doula. Almost all doulas have like an obligation-free interview. So I would say call around, meet with them, find out, if you meet with them, the most important thing I think is whether just you click and your birth philosophies kind of click. Mm-hmm. If you feel comfortable around this person, if your values are the same. Unfortunately, in the doula world, there's a lot of, it's been transitioning a lot to some pretty immoral stuff. There's doulas who support abortion work.
Okay.
There's a lot of, so I would, for me personally, and for a lot of the clients I work with, they choose me because we have similar values, and I'm a person of faith, and I share their faith to a certain extent. So that's important to a lot of moms to ask about what their beliefs are, what their doula thinks about, and then like ask them the nuts and bolts of what they provide, because that can vary a lot from one doula to another.
Sure. Right. How many births in the past 8 years? Do you have a count?
Oh, geez.
I'm just curious.
I don't even know. 60 or 60 to 70-ish. Yes. So I've had to take breaks for my own babies. And so if I was going straight through all 8 years, it'd be higher. But yeah, so I've been jumping back and forth from, my own babies and postpartum times to getting back into it. And then I've been pregnant again. So yeah, it's been, and I do a lot of, virtual, it's not really dueling, but virtual like assistance with a lot of moms who contact me with questions from other parts of the country. So obviously I can't be their doula, but they just need some help figuring different topics out, so I do a lot of that as well.
Cool. Okay. I want to end on one topic that I have never covered, I don't think. Okay. Is NFP, Natural Family Planning. I know that's a big one. It
is.
But we'll just do a few small, I don't even know. Where do you even start? What would be a good starting point just to talk about for a couple of minutes? Do you, I should say, do you follow NFP yourself?
Yeah, we do. We have since we got married. Now it's been like, obviously when we're pregnant and postpartum, I'm not charting, but yeah, we've done NFP since the beginning. We started with Creighton method. We learned that before we were married, and then that's kind of the knowledge base I go off of now. But I kind of do my own thing at this point. I've kind of learned how my body works, so I just use an app now. That's to just
there is an app for everything.
There is. Oh, there's a ton of fertility apps now, and NFP apps. I really like the term fertility awareness over NFP personally. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to. But I mean, NFP, that acronym is helpful as well. But fertility awareness, I feel like just makes more sense in my head, just because all it is knowledge. So like, it's what you do. Like NFP is what you're going to do with the knowledge and how you're going to work around with it. But for me, it's just helpful to know what's going on with my body, and just knowing around the time that I'm ovulating or when to expect my cycle and all that stuff. So yeah, we've always done it. I know feelings get very high when it comes to talking about NFP. It's always worked pretty well for us. It's definitely challenging at times. But it's good, I think. And I think it's pretty valuable information for women to have, even if they're not going to use it to necessarily plan, quote unquote, their family. It's helpful for women just to have that knowledge of like, when did I ovulate, so I can have a better due date if I do get pregnant. So that kind of thing, I think or if they have other health concerns, it's really helpful for that.
Yeah, I agree. Even if, at this point, we have 4 children, and I'm healthy and young enough, and, I would be very surprised if there weren't any more kids later on. Mm-hmm. But I will, and there's no reason for us to space the children apart any more than they are naturally, it seems like. So, but I will still probably chart and things just for my own knowledge. And it's very, it feels good to understand what's happening in your body, and kind of magical too. Like, wow, I'm doing this. It's incredible. But I have been very blessed that everything has worked normally, it's been stress-free, and I'm pretty regular on everything. How would you approach or give advice to somebody who maybe has some irregularities in their cycle, or just in need of some kind of you can do it boost?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, our journey has been fairly smooth. I mean, we've run into bumps. Postpartum can be a challenge sometimes, my cycles don't usually come back until like 13 to 15 months. I'm one of those people. So
are you breastfeeding? Is
yeah.
that why? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough. I think it's still important for moms who have issues, probably even more important for them to chart. But yeah, I know there's a growing amount of resources out there. I know Jenny Ewing has started Off the Charts, and I know I pray that that's going to be helpful for moms for whom NFP is a challenge. What we learned in our Creighton method, gosh, this is so many years ago, is that it doesn't matter if your cycle is irregular or not. NFP you should still be able to chart and identify whether or not you are fertile each day. So if you're having a ton of days that look really fertile, or you don't find any fertility, that's an underlying issue that needs to be addressed. But from day to day, you should be able to figure out whether or not you are fertile on that specific day. Some women, they have way too many fertile days, or days that look fertile, I should say. So it can be really confusing. So I'm not an NFP teacher, but I would definitely recommend women who are running into that, or who have never learned NFP but have irregular cycles, to meet with an actual teacher. Don't just read something online and then try to do NFP on your own. I think you should meet with a teacher who knows what they're doing, and get some solid advice that way. Yeah. But also you can commiserate with your friends, your Catholic mom friends. You can commiserate with them when you need to, because it can be hard for many women. There are challenges that come up with it. And
and then most archdioceses have, like a fertility awareness advocate, or, they have resources that you can reach out to, whatever archdiocese that you're in, right? Is that?
I think they're supposed to. Ours used to. It's no longer there anymore. We used to have an office for natural family planning, and it's gone, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. I had actually never really heard of it until we moved to the Milwaukee, Wisconsin archdiocese, and then there's a Milwaukee Catholic moms Facebook group. And people were posting questions about it, and a few women hopped in and said, "Actually, I'm your point person in the archdiocese." I thought that was pretty
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, nowadays you can find stuff online so easily, which is great. You can connect with people online. There's directories of teachers, and there's, like I said, Jenny Ewing's Off the Charts program is coming out, and so I run a Facebook group for our diocese, and we've had that question come up. So definitely get connected that way if you need to. And
cool. Okay, we're going to end on a very easy question.
Okay, good. There's so much to say about it.
Where can people connect with you?
Oh, I can do that one. Okay.
It's an easy one, right?
So my website is maryhaseltine.com. I haven't written in a long time. It's like I said, it hasn't been the season for writing, but it's got all my old writing and my past posts, and still relevant stuff, I think. But I'm also on Facebook, Mary Haseltine, and then I have on Instagram as well, just my name.
Perfect. Well, I will put that in the show notes so that you can just click and find. Mary, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today going over all of this stuff. I get it. You're at home homeschooling with them. Actually, I should ask too. Has quarantine changed your daily schedule very much?
Okay, so I have to be honest that this is a very privileged position to be in, because I feel like my life has not changed that much because of homeschooling. Yeah. So, and I'm praying so hard for the people for whom life has been turned upside down. And I know that I'm speaking from a place of privilege here, but yeah, it's been, there's been some challenges obviously for everybody, but overall, compared to most people, my life is still somewhat normal and the same. We miss friends though.
Our days seem to be going by faster, and I don't know why. But then we're also, because my husband owns a business and it's all online, and then we homeschool. It's just been a lot of at home time, but again, I know it's been a really challenging time, but in some ways it's been a very blessed time to have the schedule cleared, and to kind of I encourage my own family, but also others, to just reevaluate
as life gets back to normal, like what kind of things do you want to put back into your life?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. It seems like, it's been emptied out. Yeah. What can we,
Yeah,
you
like
don't
what-
have to put everything back in.
what aren't you missing? The
Yeah.
one is like, I kind of glad that that's not around anymore. And what,
Yeah. I've had a few of those myself.
yeah. So I think it's a blessed time too.
Yes. And we should look at it. The readings for today, the first reading for the Mass is from the book of Daniel. And it talks about, the 3 young men who get thrown into the furnace, and they're praising God throughout, even in the hard times. So there is goodness here, even if it, it's maybe slightly easier for some people over others. It's still difficult across the board, but there is goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad to hear that. And again, thank you, everyone listening. I will put the link in the show notes of where you can catch up with Mary and, of course, her wonderful book, Made for This. And all right, everyone, until next time. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy to understand grown-up answers, the pared down but not talked down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up where knowledge takes flight.